This is Paweł Kozioł speaking for yet another installment of the series Go for Everyone. Today I'm going to explain a thing or two about extensions. For that reason I have set up a position with a very non-commercial fuseki. Now it's White's turn. What can be done here? The first kind of extension, the one that happens really early, is the extension from the corner. And all these rules I will explain later, all these rules related to the distance between stones, somehow do not apply to it. So, if White decides to extend from the corner, he usually does so somewhere near the middle of the edge of the board. The most promising, the most interesting direction in which White will want to extend is here, because if White doesn't do it, then Black can either extend, or he can even play a joseki which doubles as an extension from the corner. So playing here as White is a doubly good move. It both creates an extension from this stone and blocks opponent's extension. Now there is a rule when such extension is safe. Basically, if we extend, we like to have at least 4 spaces from this stone so that it can fend for itself in case of invasion. This move puts some pressure on this stone, so it's useful to have a possibility of extending right here. Sometimes White may even want to limit Black's position even more, but it comes with a trade-off. Even though you have this possibility of safeguarding this stone, even though you have reduced opponent's sphere of influence a bit more, it comes at the cost of having a large gap here. Now White attacks, you need to extend, and this group may suffer because opponent's stones are very near to it. Now, knowing this rule about extending into a position from which you can make another smaller extension means that White can play differently. He can just take this corner, and now Black's extension here violates this rule because there is already a stone here. This doesn't mean that this move is impossible to play, it just means that White has a possibility of playing some invasion now, and this stone will have to escape upwards, not taking any territory, so naturally this makes this extension a bit less interesting. I don't want to speak much more about extending from the corner because it's really a fuseki question. Instead, let's talk about a single stone on the edge of the board. Suppose Black played here, White played something neutral. Let's assume here. Now you have a single stone, and it might be a good idea to extend from it. But the obvious question is, how far can you go? This move makes absolutely no sense. It just creates a situation similar to playing just one big stone instead of 2 small ones. This metaphor of playing a big stone here means that you have played 2 stones in a place where there should be just one. What about extending by 1 space? This is still too close. There are situations when such extension works. For example, here it's much better to make a suboptimal extension like this than to try to force a bigger extension and going in contact with enemy stone. You just play here, and then you have some options of escaping due to strong shape. But typically you extend by 1 space only when a wider extension is not viable. So this is also not a good move when you have plenty of space. What about extending here? This is an optimal extension because The rule states that if you extend from a wall, and you can assume a single stone as a mini wall, you extend by size of a wall, which is 1, and another square. So this is an ideal extension from a single stone. White cannot really separate you. If he tries, you are perfectly safe and you will have all the time that's needed to catch this stone. So going 2 spaces is ideal. What about going 3 spaces? This makes things much more difficult. This is an extension for rather unusual situations because it's not safe against an invasion here. You can still have a sequence which connects, for example like that. But you see, it costs you an awful lot. White gets a huge influence here. Suppose you try to do the same trick from the other side. And now you have something that looks like a wall, but there are still cutting points, whereas white has a perfectly alive group. Actually, there is a way of extending by 3 spaces from a single stone safely, but it requires, so to say, 3-dimensional thinking. Suppose black plays here, white plays here, and now it's perfectly safe to extend here. But doing so, you need to remember that you are not really taking this area. You are just creating some influence. Because the area can be easily invaded, like this. And white has no problem leaving. True, black obtained a real strong wall, and playing this sequence has hurt white's corner, so in reality white should not play this invasion right now. Later it can become much more useful. But you see that stones placed at different heights, at 3rd and 4th line, can afford extending by 3 spaces. Now what happens when we extend not from a single stone, but from a wall of 2 stones? Let's consider another common joseki. Now you have this wall of 2 stones. So by the rule, you should extend by the height of the wall, which is 2 lines plus 1. This makes perfect 3 space extension, and you're not afraid of being invaded here. Because as you see, black group is forced to crawl on the 2nd line, and if he tries to play here, he hurts his corner. So these stones, assuming there is not much outside influence, are as good as connected. Of course, situation may change if there is a black stone here, because now there might be some tricks like playing here, and depending on which side white wants to block, you will try to connect to the other stone. But even in this situation, you are able to keep white stones connected. So this is definitely a safe extension. Another important consideration while extending is not only how far you want to extend, but also how high. This is important especially when you extend from a huge wall like here. How high is this wall? 1, 2, 3, 4, perhaps 5 stones. So the size of your extension should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines plus 1, depending whether you consider this a 4-stone or a 5-stone wall, which both are viable interpretations. You can extend here or here, and the exact choice often depends on the position in another corner. But there is more to that, because you have the choice between extending basically here, 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 or here. And the correct choice, given into account this wall, is to make a high extension. The low one feels wrong, because if you play this, then the opponent has a chance of flattening your position. He plays something like this. You can connect, but black escapes. And all this huge investment you have made, several stones played in order to create the wall, and the area you have given up in the corner, basically peters out, because all you have gained is this: 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 points by playing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 stones. This is not acceptable. So, from a strong, high position, you should extend high. On the other hand, when your stone is weak, when it's outnumbered, when there is no wall, you extend on the second line, because you wouldn't really like to be invaded like that. You just need a low stone guarding the border of your group. To summarize what I have shown you. First, the early game extensions from the corner go usually somewhere here, that is, unless you want to play some joseki which allows you to place the stone here. But if you want to extend, this is a good spot, and to make this spot really good, you make sure that from this stone you can make another extension. Second thing, the rule of thumb while extending from a wall is extend by height of a wall plus 1. So, if you consider a single stone a wall, your extension is here. If you extend from a 2-stone wall, then you extend here. If somehow you manage to create a 3-stone wall, then the good place for extension is here. 1, 2, 3 plus 1, so here. And if the wall is at least 3 stones high, then you should seriously consider extending on the 4th line rather than the 3rd, because the 3rd line move is prone to the angle play and the resulting flattening of your position. This is basically everything I wanted to tell you about the extension as a move, about the action of extending. But there will be part 2, which will consider extension which happens as a shape, because it often happens that you extend first and build the wall later, and then you have to decide how far and how high to extend without seeing the wall. You just build a mental image of it, a mental image of various continuations, and decide which extension is correct. But this is a more advanced topic, and it is reserved for another video. Thank you very much for listening.